Good evening and welcome to the regular meeting of the Board of Education for Tuesday, April 20th, 2021. This meeting is now called to order. Mr. Walker, may we have a roll call?
Yes, ma'am. Dr. Blau.
Here.
Ms. Heinrich.
Here.
Mr. Fox.
Here.
Mr. Rich.
Here.
Ms. Smith.
Here.
I myself am here. And Ms. Williams.
I am here. Thank you,
All
Mr.
present and accounted
Walker.
for.
We have a quorum. We will now stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Dr. Goodrum, would you lead us, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We are now ready for the agenda. Mr. Rich?
Thank you. I move that we approve the agenda for today, April 20th, 2021, as presented.
Support.
Motion made by Mr. Rich, supported by Mr. Walker to approve the agenda. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. The agenda is approved. Now moving on to announcements. Welcome to the Farmington Board of Education regular meeting. Farmington Public Schools has a vision for high achievement for all of its students. We will engage every student in a quality learning experience, empowering each student to become a thoughtful, contributing citizen in a changing world. The board's priorities for 2020-21 are fostering development of 21st century skills, assessing program impact on student academic achievement, fostering a positive district culture and climate that incorporates equity and inclusion, recruiting, hiring, developing, and retaining high-quality staff that reflects diversity, and ensuring equitable practices. The board has agreed on goals for the remainder of the school year. We are progressing very well. The first goal is to build board unity in order to be high-functioning. Some board members recently participated in the Spring Institute hosted by MASB. This was an opportunity to be gathered to expand on that. We recently held a full-day formal onboarding session where board members had an opportunity to visit 4 schools on Friday the 9th and spent the afternoon with each member of cabinet to understand the district's functional areas. A budget workshop on Saturday followed and will be scheduled again as a follow-up. The second goal is to conduct a superintendent search and create a transition plan. The next step in this process will be the presentation of a slate of candidates to the board by School Exec Connect during a closed session on April 27th at 6 p.m. This meeting will begin in open session to allow for public comment prior to moving into closed session. The meeting is held in closed session to protect the identity of candidates until they have committed to an interview.
My apologies, Mrs. Williams. I'm being told there's no audio.
Thank you. Does anyone know at one point I fell off? Okay, so I was in the process of reviewing our board goals that we committed to, and I was outlining how we've progressed through all of those, and we've progressed very, very well. We're also going to review and improve our community relations. To further this goal, we formed a community engagement committee. A report will be provided by the committee representative later in the agenda. We will proactively plan and provide timely communications on the continuity of learning plan. The plan is on the agenda for every meeting throughout the rest of this school year. And this evening, we will discuss the reconfirmation of the instructional delivery plan. We're ensuring that district resources are aligned to goals and priority. As I stated before, our budget workshop was held on the 10th, and we're planning on another one. It was very informative and gave new board members insight into school funding, finance terminology, and the board budget process and timelines. At this time, I'd like to just take a quick minute to thank my colleagues. I've run down a list of all of the board priorities that we established in January that we said we were going to focus on for the first 6 months. And I really feel like we've progressed very, very well despite these being some pretty aggressive goals. What I'm most proud of is the fact that everyone's been working really, really hard. Over the course of 6 months, from January to June, we have no less than 30 regular workshops or regular meetings over 6 months, and that is in addition to the 30 to 40 additional committee meetings and community events that you all have attended. That is outstanding, and that demonstrates a tremendous commitment to this district and really focusing in on our first priority, which was to build cohesiveness and unity as a board. I really feel truly that I am part of a functioning board, and I appreciate each and every one of you for that. I also want to take the time to thank administration, our central office team, and administration throughout our district. Often they are here with us for many of these meetings, and I recognize again that there have been a tremendous increase in the number of meetings and the time commitment away from families and other priorities for this, and I thank you. This is on top of everyone doing their very important jobs every day, and on top of all of the challenges and surprises and adjustments that COVID-19 brings on nearly a daily basis. So on behalf of the board, to our entire staff, but particularly our central office staff and our administrators, thank you for your time, for your patience, and your selflessness in response to COVID and our focus on students. Public comments will be shared after discussion items. This will be an opportunity to share general comments. Public comment is now being treated as it has been in the past. Anyone present in the WebEx may express a live comment. Sign-up is required, and the sign-up form is available on our website. If the public comment is intended to be critical of or express dissatisfaction with a particular person or group, you are encouraged not to identify the person by name. You may request a private meeting with district representatives or utilize the complaint process found in our policy. Generally, board members and the superintendent will not respond to public comments during the board meeting. Issues may be referred to the superintendent for investigation, study, and/or a response. And that ends items from the president. We will now move to items from the secretary. Mr. Walker.
Thank you. The board has received communications regarding the 2021-2022 school year, the governor's press conference, spring sports, a FHS lacrosse fundraiser, a staff YouTube video, and COVID cases and quarantines. Communications are acknowledged, and when appropriate, a response is provided. A list of the correspondence can be found in the board packet, which is available on the FPS website.
Thank you, Mr. Walker. We will now move to the legislative update.
There is nothing of particular import to share with the community in terms of the legislative update at this time.
Thank you, Dr. Blau. Before moving to district updates, I just did want to make a quick comment as well that I mentioned that the board had a full-day orientation on April the 9th. We got the chance to visit several schools, and one of them was Lanigan Elementary School. We had a fabulous time at all of the schools, but I am calling Lanigan out because we got these wonderful T-shirts, and we love them so much that we all each decided to wear our T-shirt on the same day. How cheesy.
President Weems, is
Yes.
it okay if I
Yes,
explain
Mrs.
what
Smith.
what it means? Well, first of all, I would like to say thank you to all of the staff throughout the district that opened their arms to us by coming into their schools. But our last school that we visited was Greg Smith, and Principal Smith and his staff gave us some wonderful bags with some beautiful items in there to show their appreciation to the school board. So if I might ask Ms. Weems to stand up and show her shirt, which you are the president. So, so on this shirt, Mr. Smith had his staff, they just don't have a regular T-shirt. It has a meaning. So it means all in, which is we are all in for our students and our colleagues. And then there's equal excellence, and this is not a destination, but a mindset. And lastly, as you'll see Ms. Weems has on the front of her, as well as Ms. Fox and some of the others, it reads, "Rise." We will rise to the occasion for our Lanigan students and our Lanigan community. So thank you, Mr. Smith and the staff of Lanigan. And Ms. Weems came up with a phenomenal idea, and I think that we are all in on this. Each month, we want to represent one of our buildings. So if it's nothing but a face mask or if you got a teddy bear or something, we don't want to take your budget, but T-shirts, whatever. But we want to represent our schools and represent our staff, letting them know that we do support you and we do listen. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Weems. And thank you, Mr. Smith, and to the staff of Lanigan.
Thank you, Mrs. Smith. We will now move to item 5, which is district updates, and we will turn to our superintendent, Dr. Goodwin.
Good evening. We have a lot of exciting things going on in the Farmington schools. Since the last time I was here, we celebrated the Week of the Young Child with the Farmington Early Childhood Center, and they had their trichathon and other fabulous events meant to celebrate the young child and early learning and the importance of those things in the life of our children. So that was excellent. Also, I would like to acknowledge that one of our very own Farmington Public School principals, Mr. Joe Green at North Farmington High School, here where we are located, has been named a finalist in the Michigan Association of Secondary School Principals, so statewide finalist for Principal of the Year. So we are very excited for Mr. Green, and we look forward to hearing, about who the winner is of that very prestigious award. Also, just would like to address a number of concerns, and I just want to express to our community that we are aware there are rises in the state, there are rising numbers of COVID cases in our district as well. When we went away from the more cohorted model that we had and increased the numbers of students in the classes, we knew that was going to result in higher quarantines, which it did. Things going on outside of our schools have a heavy impact on the number of positive cases that we have had, and that is a statewide trend. However, we are in constant communication with the Oakland County Health Division. We meet with them weekly, and we talk to them daily in some instances as they assist us with the contact tracing, and they assist us in making the recommendations to keep our students safe. We are still hearing from the Oakland County Health Division that in our district, based on our numbers, that school is still the safest place for our students to be. And we listen to that, but we meet at least twice a week to go over our data, to have these discussions, to try to determine how do we balance the benefits of in-person instruction with the health and safety of our students. We take the health and safety of our staff and our students very seriously, so we monitor it very closely. And yes, we have had to close classrooms. We have had to close, and not close. We have transitioned classrooms to remote learning. We have transitioned certain grades at a school to remote learning, because we also look at the impact that the quarantine is having on the instructional delivery that we're able to provide. So we do look at this, and I don't think that we gave any false information as we prepared for this as to what we were to expect. We knew there were going to be additional quarantines. We knew that, just based on the fact that even though CDC and NGSS and everybody decided that we could do 3 feet social distancing if possible, meaning you could do less than 3 feet, they still kept the contact tracing levels at 6 feet. So we are always complying with what we are mandated to do, and we seek guidance from the experts when we are unsure of how to respond. And we take those recommendations from the experts. So.
Thank you, Dr. Goodwin. The next item on the agenda is the DEI update.
Oh, yes. And so, hi, I'm Dr. Goodrum, the Assistant Superintendent for Diversity, Equity, and and Inclusion. And I'm here to give the DEI update. So we are nearing the end of our educational equity audit. I'm so excited. So I think our very last focus group is May 27th, and that will be another district focus group. And it's a half-day session. And then we will be waiting very patiently for our report. Very excited because I know that we are doing some amazing things in our district, and I'm looking forward to hearing about what we need to do to take our district to the next level as far as being truly inclusive and having truly equitable practices throughout our district and really being welcoming to all aspects of diversity that we have within our district, because we have an extraordinarily diverse community, and that is an asset, that is a benefit, that is an excellent and great thing. And so it offers so many opportunities. So I'm very excited about that. I'm also very excited about the Farmington IDEA, Farmington Area IDEA, which is our district diversity club, that the students have planned a phenomenal diversity conference, which will be held virtually on May 4th. The theme is intersectionality, redefining labels, and our speaker is internationally renowned speaker, Dr. Bettina Love, who some of us had the opportunity, Oakland Schools featured her in their National Speakers series that they have going on currently. So the students are super excited about Dr. Love, and we are super excited. The flyer is out. It's open to all. This is something new this year. We're opening it to middle and high school students, because in the District Diversity Club, we have extended it to middle school students as well. And our middle school students have heavily been involved in the planning. And they have one of the aspects of the conference is a diversity art gallery. So we're looking forward to more students submitting some art pieces that we can showcase during our conference. And that concludes my report. Thank you.
That is excellent, Dr. Goodrum. Are there any questions?
I have a question.
Dr. Blau?
This conference, is it something that adults can attend, or is it only for middle and high schoolers?
So it is for middle and high school students, and we have a limited number of spaces. However, I do need adults to serve as breakout room facilitators. So if you would like to work the conference, you're able to attend the conference.
I would be happy to assist.
Students will be running the breakout rooms. So we just want an adult monitoring each room to ensure that everyone is acting as appropriately as we know they know how to.
I would be happy to do that, so just let me know who do I have to contact?
Yes, you contact the Assistant Superintendent of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, who is Bobby Hayes-Goodrum.
Okay.
Thank you. We will now move to reports from board committees. We will hear from finance and committees first. Mrs. Heinrich.
Yes, thank you. The Finance and Facilities Committee meeting met on April 13th. The board members on that committee are myself, Mr. Walker, and Board President Ms. Weems. The first item that we talked about was the boardroom over at the Maxfield Education Center and audience chairs. And there was some discussion on getting that room ready for when we will be able to utilize it. And the decision was made that our Director of Facilities, John Barth, is going to review the current stock of chairs and look into cleaning them as an alternative to replacing chairs at this time. And so that will be discussed again after he looks into that. The other thing that was presented was a new report. It's ESSA, Elementary Secondary Schools Act, School Level Expenditures Report. And Mrs. Kaminsky and Mrs. Pinchek just gave us a little overview and understanding about a new report. And it's not used for budgeting purposes at this time, but it's something that looks at expenditures per building, and they are hoping that it will be helpful in the future. For future agenda items, we asked for a board visions priorities workshop with MASB, Michigan Association of School Boards, and since the meeting, President Weems has scheduled a workshop for us on Saturday, May the 1st, so we're looking forward to that. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Heinrich. The next committee is Academic Excellence, Strategic Planning, and Communications Committee. That's a mouthful, Dr. Blau.
Okay, thank you, President Weems. We met recently, our Academic Excellence Committee, and we focused on two particular areas: the next generation science standards and what our district has done and is currently doing to respond to the adoption of those new science standards in our state. We'll be hearing details about that presentation later on during this meeting. We also had an opportunity to discuss and brainstorm together some ideas about a board-level community engagement committee. There were some concerns voiced around making sure that when we dialogue with members of the community in informal circumstances, that we make sure that we abide by the Open Meetings Act guidelines. So that was very helpful to get everyone's feedback. I'll wait till the next report to tell more about that.
Okay, the next report is the Community Engagement Committee, which is also Dr. Blau.
That would be me as well. So we had a very productive initial conversation. The members of the Community Engagement Committee are board member Angie Smith, Donald Walker, myself, and Diane Bauman from the central office. We had an opportunity to brainstorm about our goals, and here are the goals that we have set forth for ourselves as a Community Engagement Committee. Our primary goal is to build relationships and trust with our community. And then what we mean by community would include parents, senior citizens, building leadership, teachers, students, other staff members, librarians, mayors, city council members, anybody else who we left out who's a part of our community. And one of the particular populations we wanted to include are people who are in our community but might not have students in our schools. So to be very inclusive, we want to give the community an opportunity to get to know us beyond our roles as school board members, and we also want to have an opportunity to get to know community members beyond just a voice during public comment or an email. We really are looking forward to having the opportunity to get to know one another person to person. We also want to increase the degree of community member access to board members so that emails and public comment are not the only vehicles through which the community has an opportunity to interact with us. We came up with a lot of wonderful ideas. Diane was very helpful here, and also Ms. Smith as a longstanding board member. You were able to provide us with a lot of different ideas about ways that we might make this happen. Unfortunately, because of COVID, a lot of them are off the table at the moment. However, Diane is going to keep us informed as to the different kinds of things going on, like the Battle of the Books, which, although it was virtual, Ms. Smith did participate in that. So there are opportunities even now for us to actively engage in community events, even though it's COVID. Once COVID has subsided, to the extent that we can again attend in-person events, there will be a lot of opportunities for each of us to engage with the community at those events in an informal way. And also, we look forward to scheduling some events specifically intended for the purpose of meeting with the community. So some of the coffee and conversation types of events that Ms. Smith has held in the past. The Beloved Community Initiative is having a John Burns Memorial weekend, and on that Saturday, May 15th. I don't have a time yet, but several of us will be participating in that weekend of events, and we'll have a sort of virtual coffee and conversation opportunity to get to know members of the community. And more will be coming, so we will keep you posted as we add events to our calendar.
Mrs. Smith?
And Dr. Blau forgot to mention that during the time of Ms. Buckley sending out reminders and condolences, we as a community, with Dr. Blau and Mr. Walker, will take the opportunity to send out the condolence cards. So that's what I've been doing now, and then the three of us will work with that together.
Thank you, Ms. Smith, for adding that.
You're welcome.
Thank you all. That committee seems to be very busy. We appreciate you guys who are on that committee coming together and forming that. This is a very important subject matter for the board. We will now move to discussion items. Item 7, the NGSS High School Biology Resource. Is that Dr. Coffin?
Actually share my screen, and I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Colleen Stam, and she's going to walk through the presentation about some exciting potential resources that we would like to be using in our district soon.
Hello, everyone. I know I met you about a month or so ago, but just to reintroduce myself, I am the K-12 Math Science Coordinator for the district, and I've been in this role for 4 years now. Before that, I was a middle school teacher in the district for about 15 years, teaching math and science. So I'm excited to be here tonight to tell you about the biology resource that our teachers have been working really hard to learn and use within their classrooms. So to give you a little bit of background, in 2015, the state adopted the new Michigan Science Standards, which are based on the Next Generation Science Standards, which are national science standards. And just to tell you a little bit about those standards, I know some people on the board were part of the board, I think it was 2 years ago now, when we went through a little bit of a mini introduction to the standards. But for those that are new, these new science standards really focus a lot more on students doing science. Content is still part of it, but they still need to do science, and it also focuses on students looking at science through different lenses. They call them cross-cutting concepts. So it also incorporates a lot of instructional shifts, meaning that the students were put at the center of the learning, and they were really driving the learning. So within the new standards, students ask questions, and then lessons are given based on the questions that students are asking. So the teachers, this was very new for them. So we've done a lot of work learning these new standards. And so in 2017, we started the work to align our curriculum to the new Michigan Science Standards. So teachers have participated in something called the Next Generation Science Exemplar, which was a 4-day training where they learned what these new standards and this new science way of teaching looks like in the classroom. So they got to experience it as a student for a couple days, and then we talked about how does this affect the way we teach and the way we deliver our content. So we've had about 90% of our teachers in the district go through this. It's one of the highest actually in the county, and teachers have really benefited from this training. There's been really positive feedback from that. And so for the K-8 teachers, in 2019-20, we adopted 2 programs to help them teach, because this is a different way of teaching. So this is a resource that really helps them understand how the content comes together with the practices and these different lenses of science. So in elementary, we adopted a program called Phenomenal Science. And as of next year, that will be fully implemented in all grade levels. And then we also, in the middle school, adopted My Star Science, which comes out of Michigan Tech. And we are on year 2 of that implementation. So K-8 is well on their way. We're now working on high school. The first thing we had to tackle for high school was the new course sequence, because the content is different in the standards and the way that we look at the content is different. We needed to create some new science courses. So we started that work in 2018, and last year we brought it to the board right before the pandemic started, actually. So here is the new course sequence, which begins next year with our freshman class. So there's a biology or honors biology option for freshmen. And then students, you'll see 4 classes. They'll have to choose from 2 of those 4 classes after freshman year to get 3 credits for graduation. So there's a physical science course, which is a combination of chemistry and physics. There's an earth and space science course, which integrates in chemistry, physics, and biology concepts. And then we have an honors chemistry in the environment, which also integrates in some earth science, and honors physics in the universe, which also integrates earth science into those classes. So in order to be prepared for next year in our implementation, our biology teachers have been working really hard for the past 2 years to determine what resource would help them to teach the new standards. So last April, after we had brought the new course sequence to you, we we need to look at 1 credit for biology. What were we going to do for the 1 credit biology class? And teachers really wanted to look for instructional units versus textbooks, because this new way of doing science, although reading is still an important part of science, the doing of the science is so important that we wanted some units instead of textbooks in order to support that. We also wanted to be consistent across schools, because in the past, in our high schools, a biology class at North Farmington didn't necessarily look the same as a biology class at Farmington High School. And we wanted to have the same experience no matter what high school our students attended. So if we all adopt the same resource, then that would help with that. And the teachers also decided that biology and honors biology would use the same resource, but honors biology would add in some extra, so that there would be extra thinking, extra things that the students would do in that honors course. And then the teachers also wanted a common resource because they really wanted to collaborate and work together. They wanted to work across schools and work as one big team instead of in separate schools. So in the fall of 2019, we looked at 3 different resources as a biology team. We looked at Carbon Time, Model-Based Biology, and Inquiry Hub. The team decided after exploring those that they wanted to try to pilot Carbon Time. So last fall, we had 2 teachers at North Farmington and 1 at Farmington who piloted Carbon Time during the first semester. The second semester, Carbon Time is only a 1 semester resource, but Novi High School has worked with Carbon Time, and I believe also Seattle schools, to develop some units that are like Carbon Time, but are about genetics and evolution for second semester. So those were the units we started to use for second semester, and then the pandemic came, so we put a pause on it, but they did get a chance to do a couple units within that second semester. So then in February, if you go back 1 slide, please, Dr. In February, the teachers met, and after discussing the Carbon Time pilot with the teachers that had been part of the pilot, they had a discussion about would we move forward with Carbon Time. And some guiding principles we used were 3D learning, 3-dimensional learning, which is those 3 pieces I talked to you about: the content, the practices, and the lenses that we look at science through. So they used that principle. The new standards are all about natural and phenomenon-based learning. So what's these ideas in science that we look at, and it's a big idea for the unit, and then the students learn little pieces to help explain what's going on in that phenomenon at the beginning of the unit. So for example, in Carbon Time, they start off one of the units with ethanol burning. Why does ethanol burn? So every lesson they learn a little piece that helps answer that question. So at the end of the unit, they can explain why ethanol burns. And then we also wanted to look for some instructional practices like discourse, students talking to each other. DQB stands for driving question board, meaning students are asking questions and those questions are used to do the lessons. And then a summary table, which is a way for at the end of each lesson, the students and teachers to decide what is it that we learned today that helped us answer that question about, for example, ethanol burning. What's the little piece that we learned today? And that's what a summary table does. It helps keep all of those ideas in one place. So we decided as a team that carbon time is something we wanted to move forward with. So you'll see some of our survey results from our teachers. They wanted to move forward with carbon time this year. So this year, I give the biology team a lot of credit because there was a lot of changes happening this year. And they decided they still wanted to use carbon time. So all of the biology teachers at Farmington and North Farmington worked together to do carbon time for this first semester. And it was an honor to watch this group grow because they worked so well together and they collaborated so well, and they created some really amazing virtual lessons for this carbon time resource that really was not meant to teach virtually. So they did a phenomenal job with that, and I give them a lot of credit. The teachers attended 13 hours of professional learning from May through December in order to support the teaching of carbon time this year. And again, I said they worked collaboratively. They worked so well together. And then within this carbon time, we were able to form a partnership with the MEA and the Create for STEM Institute out of Michigan State University. So they worked together. MEA worked to fund the professional learning for carbon time for our district. So it was at no cost to us. And then the Create for STEM, we've formed a very nice partnership with them. And MSU is going to continue to work with us moving forward as we look at all the rest of our new courses. So to give you a little look into carbon time. So carbon time focuses on how matter and energy cycle through our world. So students in every unit take one piece. For example, they look at the cells. How do matter and energy move through and change through our cells? And they look at it through the lens of a student. How do students change and grow? And then they also look at it through the lens of ethanol burning. I said that before. They talk about when people exercise, where does the fat go? So they talk about the matter and energy. Why, when I exercise, does fat turn into something else? They look at why does bread mold? So there's all these different phenomena where they're looking at how matter and energy cycles through the environment. And the students engage as questioners, investigators, and explainers throughout this entire series. And then they also look at this natural phenomenon that we talked about. They look at plants growing. There's a really interesting experiment where they have mealworms and they put them into a closed container and they look to see what happens to those mealworms. They have a chemical in there that changes color when there's more carbon dioxide in the air. So they look to see what happens to these mealworms overnight so they can track how the matter and energy comes from the food into the mealworms. It goes back into the air. So carbon time really keeps stressing this idea of matter and energy. And so right here is some data. Now, this is not from our students. This comes straight from carbon time, though. And it shows the post-test data for carbon time. And the post-test questions for carbon time are very similar to the M-STEP questions that we'll be taking this year, the new M-STEP. And you can see in the blue, those are students who did not participate in carbon time. And the red is students who did. And the level of understanding, a 3 is really where we want students to be. And you can see with carbon time, most students hit a level 3 or higher, as opposed to those who did not. And again, these are questions like the ones that will be on the M-STEP. So some teacher feedback. Jennifer Ballore, who is our instructional leader at North Farmington, and she's been in the district for 24 years, was one of our pilot teachers, and she wanted to share with you that students really were able to be challenged and found these units rewarding. So this is the year 2 of her doing this. In fact, last year she shared a story with me about when the Australia wildfires were coming. Although the video's not in there, I know we talked about it. I was not able to get the video. I was supposed to get a video from Mrs. Ballore, but she's been a little busy. So this is linked in here, and I'm just sharing a few points from her her thing that she wrote down for us. But the Australian wildfires. So last year when they were doing carbon time, the wildfires were happening in Australia, and she shared an article with them about how these thunderstorms were just popping up where these wildfires were. And right away, her kids were able to make the connection That was because of the carbon that was cycling through those fires and going up into the air, even though they weren't even studying weather. This was in biology class, but they were able to make that connection of the carbon moving through the environment and how that affects different parts of the environment. So that was a great connection. She says that, she finds that these units are rigorous and responsive for students. And there is some things that we need to change and work on because no resource is perfect. So we talked about making these a little bit more hands-on, a little more lab experiences in there for students. So moving forward, again, this year, all biology and honors biology teachers used carbon time for first semester. And moving forward, we plan to continue with that. And then for second semester, use the carbon time-like units, we call them. They're based off of the carbon time setup. And they were developed by Novi High School. They'll be focusing on genetics and evolution. In the summer and fall of this year, we'll have some additional opportunities for learning around carbon time for teachers. And in the winter, we will continue to support them teaching these genetics and evolution units. We'll start to look at different text because text is still an important part of science. Students need to know how to read science text. They need to know how to read science textbooks. So our next step is, now that we know our units and our resources, what text can we put in place so students can do some reading in science and be prepared to read different science pieces and kinds of text. And then we will continue to collect data. This year is the first year that the M-STEP science is not a pilot. So we will be getting some data and we'll start collecting data on our students and M-STEP and how they're doing both with the content and the science practices. So I believe we have questions, time for questions.
Dr. Blau, and then Mr. Walker.
Forgot about that. The MSS, are those the same as the NGSS?
It's science in the lakes, so they tried to make it more about Michigan, but a couple words in about 8 of the standards, K-12, they are the NGSS standards.
Thank you.
Mr. Walker?
Thank you. This looks really, really robust. I was wondering, especially as it relates to the honors portion of the curriculum, how does that line up with I.B. that's taught in Farmington?
So this would move right into the IB curriculum. In fact, the philosophies in the next generation science standards are very similar to some of the IB philosophies. So it actually sets students up very well to move into the IB courses. What would happen though is for our IB students in high school, because they start junior year, they would only take 2 of those course sequences. They would take biology and then they would choose one of those 4 courses we talked about: physical science, honors chemistry, honors physics, and earth. Although it's my understanding that some of the IB students actually double up their sophomore year and do take 2 science classes, so they could still get in the 3 credits.
Thank you.
Mrs. Smith?
Ms. Pham, actually mine is not a question, it's a comment. Thank you. I really appreciate this so much. Science is, well, many of you know my major is mortuary science and my minor was music. I switched my major to my minor. So as a young student going into science, doing the dissecting, I just got a kick out of all of that. So hearing what I know I'm weird, but hearing what you are doing, it will give the students the opportunity that have that curiosity like me, to force, well, not force, but make them want to go into sciences, especially young girls. And so I'm really excited about this, and I want to thank you. But the only thing they don't have to really worry about where the fat goes when they exercise, it all came here. So, but thank you. I really appreciate this. This made my night to hear the great things that you guys are doing with this, with the science, because science can be very intimidating to a lot of people. Thank you.
Heinrich.
Yes, thank you. This is more of a comment rather than a question. This has been such a difficult year, and, we've heard from a lot of families questioning why Farmington, what does Farmington have to offer? And just listening to Ms. Stam's presentation, leadership. I'm new to the board, and I am just so impressed with the leadership in our district. Best practices for teaching and learning. This program and everything in the presentation just highlights best practices for teaching and learning, collaboration within the department, collaboration across the district with schools, collaboration with other school districts, in addition to the partnership with the outside agencies. So just hats off to our team, our district team, our teachers, our staff, for really promoting the best for our students and having that in mind under extenuating circumstances.
Mr. Walker, and then Mrs. Fox.
Yes, I'd like to agree with my colleague that the seamlessness across the high schools as a part of the curriculum is something that I'm very much in favor of. I'm not a big fan of one school having a more advanced, air quotes, curriculum than some other school, because all of our children are gifted, and all of them should at least start at the same place and then progress based on their own particular gifts and talents. You mentioned that the curriculum was more about the students doing as opposed to just receiving content or lecture. As best that you can possibly estimate, how much of it is project-based learning or project-based that they're doing? And is there, and know it's early, but given what we're dealing with, unfortunately, with the pandemic, what are the thoughts around, as we go into the fall, how we are able to keep the kids with their hands on those projects as they move into a possibility of having to do things more remotely?
So I would say 90% of what they're doing is them. There are a couple lessons where teachers may have to do some direct instruction, but the difference with these standards is that comes near the end of the unit. When the students are investigating and they're just stuck, they're like, we're missing a piece, and we know we're missing it. And so sometimes there may be some direct instruction, but I would say 90% of it is students doing the science. Mm-hmm. That's what these new standards are about. As far as next year, I think that our teachers have worked so hard to continue that project idea virtually that I think we'll still, no matter what the situation looks like in the fall, be able to experience something like this. In fact, I've worked with them to take some of their labs and turn them into like Google Slides where kids could do it in a breakout room, and they had virtual dice on it so they could still do the simulation. And there's a lot of great online simulations where students were still able to collect data. So we've been working to really make that project-based experience still happen within the virtual environment.
And Colleen, I would add, just to your credit, is that in our middle school with the MyStar units, we really were wanting to make sure there was still that manipulating material experiences. And so we were able to repurpose our science funds that we would use for in-person learning and sent kits home to students. So 6th, 7th, 8th grade could come and pick up a science kit and take it home. So we did some nice experiences to kind of keep that going. But I will say, I think to Colleen's, to more credit to our teachers who learned so much technology that was able to do the engagement that Colleen said that the teachers developed for our students virtually.
And thank you for bringing that up, because I actually did just meet with the physics teacher today to start planning on our new physics course. And we talked about that exact piece. Moving forward, if there's virtual sections, we would create kits to send home so students could still experience the science. Yes.
The kit pick up and watch my child work with it. It really was fun to watch this develop over a couple of days, weeks, and so forth. So great job. Thank you.
Mrs. Heinrich.
You kind of brought that up. The next courses are, you talked about the biology, but is the plan to build the same approach in the next two sequence of courses that are offered in the high school?
Yes. So biology has many more resources out there that are already created. So it's a little bit easier for us to look at things. Chemistry, earth science, physics, they're still kind of catching up. All the curriculum writers are still catching up with that. So in fact, today I met with the physics teacher, as I mentioned, and we wrote the first unit. So we're doing some of that curriculum writing ourselves for the next courses. And that's where MSU is going to come in and support us in that work.
That I would add on that what I appreciate about when I came into Farmington, that Colleen had done very similar work with the MyStar and the Phenomenal Science K-5 and 6-8, that we're going to see very similar science experiences throughout a student's K-12 learning experience. While they might be different names of titles of instructional materials, the core work of what students are doing creates a cohesiveness K-12. And so when you think about implementing new standards, one of the values that our teacher leaders bring is slowly implementing all the pieces to do a K-12 adoption. You'll notice that this has taken a number of years to get all the pieces in place so we can build that continuity and do the professional development, have the readiness and capacity to do the work.
Mrs. Fox.
Well, actually, I'm very excited about this inquiry-based science. And so, but my question is a little bit off topic, I think. And that is, does the district use AP courses? I'm hearing the honor courses, but are we using AP courses, or do we have AP classes within the district? Thank you.
We have AP chemistry, AP physics, AP biology. I could be missing one, but yes, we do have AP science courses.
You did not mention that in this inquiry base because it's a whole different process in terms of it being, you know, a freshman college course or whatever. Is that why we didn't hear about AP courses in science?
Right, because they're not part of our graduation requirements. So I was just referring to our graduation requirements, but we still do have the AP courses. And these courses that they're taking prior to those AP courses will actually set them up very well with the new AP philosophy and the way College Board has been changing those courses.
All right.
So the content standards that are covered in the AP courses. So the Michigan Science Standards cover those K-12 base programming that we do. And so those AP courses are electives. And so they supplement and add and extend.
It is so exciting to hear that our district is on the cutting edge of instruction for our students. The inquiry-based, hands-on, experiential, project-based opportunities for our students, it's phenomenal. It's phenomenal. It is so consistent with what we know intuitively as teachers works for kids, not only in terms of their learning in the classroom today, but in terms of what will stay with them. When they have these experiences and they are so involved from the beginning of the unit all through to the end of the unit, so fully invested individually in the question asking and the discovery and the exploration, then they own that learning in a much more personal and permanent way than just reading it in a book, taking notes, memorizing the information, and taking the test. So this is so exciting. So we've known for a long time intuitively that this is what works, but also we now have the cognitive neuroscience to back this up. That these are the teaching methods. They're messier. They sometimes take more time. They can be more difficult to assess, and it's all worth it in terms of the quality and permanence of the student learning that results. Also, it's very exciting that we are collaborating with the MEA, with MSU, with Novi. That's fantastic. That's such a forward-thinking new model of working together to provide top-notch educational experiences for our students. So hats off to all of you. Thank you so much to the teachers who piloted this and who chose to keep going even during COVID into the second semester. I'm so excited for our school district and especially for our students, but thank you so much, Ms. Stam, and thank you to our teachers.
Agree with everything that's been said. Thank you for your comments and your questions. I love that we're making learning interesting, that we're making science interesting. You certainly piqued my interest with the understanding of how we reduce fat. And Mrs. Smith, I'll talk to you offline about how I can transfer it over to you.
Oh, all right, tell me right now.
Next item on the agenda. If there are no more questions for the biology resource, okay, great. We will move on to public comment before we get to action items. Mrs. Buckley, is there any public comment?
Hi. Having some technical issues here. All right. Hi, I'm Lucas Lasecki. I'm 16 years old and attended Farmington Public Schools for 10 years before transferring to another district this year. During my time at Wood Creek and Warner, I was involved in programs such as Links, where I interacted with students with autism and other disabilities. So I'm a bit bothered by the use of seclusion rooms in Farmington schools. It's something I recently learned about, and it was something I kind of thought it was just something that I couldn't really say anything about because it wasn't happening here. Now I'm just a little bothered that it's happening here in Farmington schools. Yes.
Lasecki. Are there any more public comment? Seeing that there is no further public comment, we will now close public comment and we will move into our next item, which is item number 9, action items, reconfirmation of the instructional delivery plan.
And I'm going to ask Dr. Coffin to please just start us off. You have the best opening for this.
So good evening again. In your packets, you have the information as we provide each month around the reconfirmation plan. The recommendation is to continue with our current model of instruction, which is five days a week for our elementary, 4 full days for our secondary with 1 day remote, in the afternoon in elementary being remote instruction, and no changes with our special education or our early childhood. I did want to call attention to the board. You'll see the weekly II.A. interaction rates that we are required to present. You might see in week 3 and week 4, we are around just over 92% for 1 week and 91%. After spring break, we had families who decided based on either their travel or just the situations within their family and what worked best for them to keep their children remote. And so that's reflected in those numbers. So just wanted the board to see that as families selected to stay in a remote setting for a little bit, we were able to honor that. So I'm certainly happy to answer any questions. Again, this is something that is in front of the board each month.
Mrs. Smith.
Thank you, Dr. Coffin. The question is, I have actually 2. The one question, I think you can answer this. With the rise of the quarantines and the cases, are you seeing more parents deciding to say they want to go remote? And then the question.
Yeah, I don't know if it's more, like I said, I think after spring break, many families made that decision in more of a preventative way. I would say right now, some of the quarantining, as Dr. Goodrum mentioned earlier in the meeting, we really start when we do our contact tracing, there's some quarantining that is required, but then we also then look at, is it best in the instructional integrity piece to put the class remote? So that's been something different for us. When we were in the hybrid, we didn't necessarily have that as something that we had to look at, and now it is. So again, as families request that, our principals are working on that on a case-by-case basis, because we do want to make sure that we're providing quality instruction to our students who choose to go remote.
And my other question is, and I don't know if this is for you or who's ever over the safety. So as an administrator, we understand that the emails come from our superintendent and from you to let the staff, they let the community know, and you guys have done a great job of keeping us posted on what's going on. But when it comes down to the staff, how does that, because I can understand elementary. So, because you've got the elementary principal and that one teacher, and then probably your specials. How does that work by talking to middle school and high school? Do you talk to your principals first, and then the principals talk to each teacher? And then how does that work as far as then when you decide that you want to, who reaches out and tells those parents to go remote? The principal or the teacher? Because I can understand elementary because they only deal with the one teacher, and they may have a specialty teacher. So I understand how your elementary could handle that. So how does that, could you explain that to the community, how that's done and how you guys decide how to go remote? Thank you.
Yes, sure. And I will start, and then Dr. Goodrum can certainly jump in. Our district nurse, Mary Larson, really is kind of our key point person for that. We have a process in place where she is contacted by the building principal. We also have a spreadsheet where we keep track of students who maybe have gone home when they were sick. She is also monitoring that. So it's a conversation between the nurse and the principal, and then through the contact tracing, they start to look at, if we have maybe more than 50% of a class where we need to quarantine a group of students, like you said in the elementary, then we do that. At the secondary, the contact tracing is a little bit different, and Dr. Goodrum had referred to where in one of our middle schools we put a whole grade remote, just because the contact tracing got so extensive that we were able to identify the quarantining, and then we contacted the families and let them know that their students would be switching to remote. So yes, it is. It's a little bit more time consuming at the secondary. I think that athletics also plays a part in that, which we don't have that in the elementary as well. But, just a huge shout out to our district nurse, Mary Larson, who works honestly 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, working with our families, taking the time to call each family and talk through the situation with them. And to Diane Bauman, who really helps on the communication front and making sure that this is getting out in a timely way. We've taken feedback. You see now our letters are more consolidated, so that once, we have multiple situations on one letter, because we had feedback that people were getting inundated with this information and they wanted to be able to focus on that. So we have a similar process, but you are right that at our secondary schools, it's a little more complicated for several reasons, but it's still the same people, and it's all hands on deck. Our principals help with contact tracing. So everybody's just really working to ensure our families have all the information they need.
Thank you.
And I'll just add that it has been an overwhelming task for Ms. Larson. And so we are getting her some additional assistance. We've been just trying to figure out what was the best way to do it, but she has some additional assistance now. And we are looking in the future for giving her even more assistance through the process not just the contact tracing, but the communication, all the phone calls, because it does take time. And so there is a bit of a delay sometimes because she is one person working with, you know, a number of families. So she has some help. She has some help now, and she has more help coming.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Mr. Walker?
Thank you. And Dr. Goodrum, I think you just really spoke to one of my questions, and that is, what in the way of support do we have for our district nurse? And so thank you so much for that and the foresight with respect to that. And I just wanted to be clear with this question, that families who are currently in person, with the numbers increasing, do they still have the option of going remote and stepping out of the in-person into a remote setting, or once where they are is where they remain for the rest of the year?
The families are working directly with their school principals and working on those on a case-by-case basis. But yes, if they are requesting to stay remote, there's a lot of different situations. So that, again, that communication is with the principal and the families. And there are some places where the families are just choosing to stay remote throughout the rest of the year. There's others that are asking for 2 weeks. So we're working on those in those chunks of time. But again, really trying to work with our families. What is their specific need at that time? And we want to do the best for their child.
Thank you.
Mrs. Fox?
Yes, I'm extremely concerned about the numbers that have gone up and up and up. They're not going down, and they're increasing. And I would like to speak to my board colleagues to entertain a conversation on going forth with what our governor has suggested of a 2-week remote, so that hopefully we can begin to bring these numbers down. Thank you.
I would just like to respond to that just to clarify. The governor recommended a 2-week pause more than 2 weeks, like 2 weeks ago, so it would have been, I believe, over today. I think, I'm trying to get the timing, the 9th.
Yes, it would have been today.
Yeah, it would have been over
So
today.
the timing was very specific.
But she also only suggested it for high school, not even, she only suggested it for high school. The places where we're closing, or where we're transitioning the most number of students to remote has been elementary school, elementary and middle school, where
Well,
we're
what about
transitioning.
the elementary school, and then there's the middle,
Elementary and middle school, right, which is not high school. She didn't say secondary, she only recommended it for high school. And then, you know, she also recommended a pause on sports. I just wanted to add clarification to that. She recommended only the 2-week break for high school, which those districts who did that, which, as you know, were very few, those students are back in school as of yesterday.
so that time was very specific then. It did not, you had to go with the very specific timeline that she had enforced or that she had recommended.
I'm just saying, based on her recommendation, had we done it just then, we would have been back yesterday. And that what we have seen at the state level, part of it was based on spring break. So the spring break timing, which is something we considered, and we actually had meetings about during spring break, looking at the numbers. We don't get spring break like everyone else does, but what we have found, again, is that, or as people have these breaks or the 2 weeks, not sure that it does anything except for pause our notifications for 2 weeks. Pause the amount of people we have to quarantine for 2 weeks, but then we're back, and then we're back at it. It has not necessarily proven to be a strong mitigation procedure. And as like the Oakland County Health Division head epidemiologist has said, I believe, to the Oakland County School Board, when their kids are in school, we know they're wearing their mask, we know they're washing their hands. When they're at home and everybody is out, you know, they're getting together and they're, you know, sometimes engaging in behavior that is not safe from a mitigation strategy.
Well, I guess part of my concern, Dr. Goodrum, is that prior to us going into this in-school model, we were very low. There were very few positives and there were very few quarantine. And now it's going up substantially. And so I'm not comfortable of moving forward in the way that we are today.
Understood, thank you. Or, I'm sorry, that wasn't for me, that was for you.
Mrs. Heinrich?
I'm sorry, these headphones, when I speak, they echo in my ears. I remember that you stated, when you talked about the governor's recommendation and you met, and you told us that, and one of the questions I asked when a student is positive, where is that coming from? And so if you could just review with me, my understanding is a parent will call the school and say, my child has tested positive, and that's where the cases are. And you looked at the fact that you told us that the positive cases weren't being transmitted from student to student in the school, in the classroom. Can you address that? And can you tell us, have you seen an increase if student A tests positive? Are there other positive cases within that circle of the classroom or within the schools that they're piggybacking against, or are they still cases that are coming from outside the schools that we're dealing with? And if that's true, then whether we're in person or not, it seems like there would still be positive cases where it's just that our virtual families are not reporting if they're positive or not.
Our virtual families have we have gotten reports from virtual families sometimes, but not all the time. But we have no way of knowing. Like we would have no way of knowing, but we have gotten some reports from virtual families. I will say that you never know exactly where transmission is occurring. But basically, anytime we have 2 students who are positive in a classroom, we have quarantined that entire classroom based on the probability of school spread. And so with students being closer, there has been an increase in that, but that is still not the vast majority. That's not still the majority, not even vast majority of our cases. The vast majority of of the cases still, in most cases, are contacted or outside of school. You know, a family member has contacted it and the student is positive, or the student comes home and then is tested because somebody was positive and then they're positive, but then we don't have to quarantine because, you know, they tested them and kept them home while a family member tested positive, things of that nature. So again, with the closer contact, we have had cases where we did determine that it was a probable school spread, and in those cases, that is when we close classrooms. That's not always when we transition to remote. Sometimes it's for just the number of quarantines, and again, to maintain the instructional integrity. And this is what we've been asked to do. We've been asked to move classrooms remote, move schools remote as necessary versus moving the district remote. That is what they had been telling us since we came back. Like, we just follow the guidance that we were given.
Is that the guidance from Oakland County?
Yes. And again, as a reminder, the governor made her suggestion from a state lens, not knowing our data. The day before she made her suggestion, the Oakland County Superintendent met with the Oakland County Health Division, and we asked, these numbers are high. What is your recommendation? And again, we heard schools are still the safest places for children.
Thank you.
Mrs. Smith?
Dr. Goodrum, I want to thank you for all the work that you have done. And your hands are tied. You're following what the Oakland County has put before you. My concern, and I will speak up and say, I do have major concerns. I have major concerns of us being back. I mean, this laundry list of students being quarantined is just unbelievable. One of my colleagues, before we went back, stated to the parents of this community, make sure if you want this to happen and you want your students to go back, wash your hands, social distance, don't do all of these things. Where these students are picking this up at, I don't know. I do still stand by, I had a parent today tell me, well, COVID isn't going anywhere. So you just deal with it and send kids to school. Well, at the end of the day, another neighboring community lost a 15-year-old child. Mm-hmm. And my fear is that we will have that same situation. And I don't want this to be an oops, but I stand by what I have always said, that I don't feel comfortable with students being in school. We have had letters, take down the partitions, we want 3 feet, we don't want any mitigations. Hospital beds are full. Mm-hmm. People are dying. This is not fake news. The last I remember, people that were passing away, they're not stunt doubles and they're coming back. This is no show. Mm-hmm. I am against our kids being back. We were told when this first hit, 18 months. 18 months. But then now the cases are growing, it's longer. Dr. Goodrum and her cabinet are doing what's best they can with what they are being told to do. Their hands are tied too. I'm just going on record saying I have had nightmares about this. I've had nightmares of losing a teacher. I've had nightmares of losing a student. I've had the emails, well, we don't want to hear from Angie Smith anymore. Well, you're going to hear from me. Until I'm tired of speaking for children. And that will be the day that you throw dirt on me. I have heard other school boards go through this, other neighboring communities where superintendents are walking out of board meetings, colleagues from other districts being, attacked because of their beliefs. I thank Dr. Coffin, I thank Dr. Goodrum, everybody, and Mary, and oh my God, Diane Bauman, and Kim Buckley.
Oh, 7 days a week.
7 days a week, almost 24 hours, we get a text message, a laundry list of what's going on and who's infected. And again, I stand by everything I believe in. I do not think that our children should be back in school. And I thank you, Dr. Goodrum, because your hands are tied. You have done everything. You have listened to parents, you have listened to us, and you have listened to Oakland schools. So I don't want anybody to put this blame on this woman. She has done her job, and she has done a great job. I don't want her cabinet to take the hit. And you can keep hitting at me, because I duck real well. But at the end of the day, I stand by my beliefs. I don't believe in any child going back into these buildings until we can make it safe for everyone. Thank you, President Weems.
Thank you, Mrs. Smith. I just want to make sure that we kind of, I want to make sure that we level set and help everyone understand where we are. So several weeks ago, I can't remember the time frame now, we decided to return to in-person learning up to at least 20 hours per week. And at that time, we gave the district the authority to make the call with respect to whether an emergency were to cause the district to have to pull back on that and to pause in-person learning for any reason, including an increase in COVID numbers. We discussed at that time that if we were to increase in-person learning, we should expect that we would have more quarantines. Not necessarily more cases, but certainly more quarantines because of the reduction in the social distancing. We are seeing now both an increase in quarantines and in COVID cases, and that is alarming. I don't think anyone sits here and dismisses that. I don't think anyone sits here and, has a cavalier attitude about it at all. It is concerning, and we're all concerned about kids. What I want to say, though, is that I don't know. I'll be honest, I am not the expert in the room. I don't know whether spread is occurring in school. I leave that to our superintendent to find out. I think our superintendent would also acknowledge that she is also not the expert, but she has more access to the experts and the folks that need to be consulted on this matter than I do. And so I'm comfortable continuing to leave that decision-making with Dr. Goodrum. We did get notification from the governor that her recommendation was to close schools on April 2nd, starting April 5th, for 2 weeks for high school only. The Oakland Schools Association polled schools in our area, school districts in our area, and out of the 30 school districts, one of those 30 paused learning for 2 weeks as recommended. Another one paused for 1 week only. So out of the 30 that were polled, 2 responded that they did heed those recommendations. I'm not sure what that did to numbers over the course of the last couple of weeks. We all are aware, and I've been sharing the data with you that we do receive, that cases are still on the rise. However, our superintendent, and with the advice of cabinet and our nurses and all of the folks that they have access to, have made a recommendation, for how we've progressed over the past couple of weeks. I think at this table, what is at question is whether we're still comfortable with our plan for in-person learning. I'm not sure, and this is where I'm going to turn to Dr. Goodrum and ask the question, are we in a position, because previously we made the decision that we were returning to school, and we're not responsible for the, I'm going to call it like snow day, impact, like the decision about whether today, tomorrow, the next day, whether we should be in school or not. We're not going to call an emergency board meeting, every other day to make a call, I think, as to whether school should be open or not. And that's where I want to get at the sense as to where the board wants to operate. We'll operate wherever the consensus of the board is, but I think that's the part that I need a little bit of clarity on. And so I'm going to ask you to answer. Mr. Walker had a question, and then Mrs. Heinrich.
So I'm going to, that was because my headphones. I'm going to answer the question, and I'm going to ask Dr. Coffin to step in if I speak incorrectly. It is my understanding that if you do not reconfirm this plan, then we revert to the last vote to reconfirm this plan, which is this plan, basically. Is that correct? Okay. So that is outside of another vote where you take board action, where you change our plan. Like, for instance, like a pause for 2 weeks would require, like, that's not a learning plan. Like, pause for 2 weeks. Like, if you want to change the learning plan, you need to change the learning plan, meaning state that we are either hybrid or we're remote, and that will be the plan until we vote on another plan. So let's talk about the plan. So you can confirm the plan. So for instance, scenario, if you're interested, you can confirm the plan, and then I guess you have the option to then take a vote to, pause learning for 2 weeks, knowing that at the end of those 2 weeks,
But
we would
that's different
return.
than the plan.
Yes, that's not the
Right.
plan. So the plan would be, so it depends on what people are thinking. If you're thinking to the end of the school year and you want to change the plan, then you have to make a vote that's very specific to that. But if you believe that a pause and then we come back to the 20 hours that we have, knowing, all the implications of if we don't do that, then again, you would have to be specific about what the new learning plan looks like, and that would remain in place until the next time you vote to confirm a plan.
Thank you, Dr. Goodman. That became clearer for me.
Let me ask Dr. Coffin if there was anything she would like to add to that, just because that is my understanding, and I want to make sure, because I know she has a lot of information regarding this as well.
Yeah, no, Dr. Goodrum, that you are exactly right. And so the recommendation is just to continue to stay the course with the understanding, as the board has always been very clear, that when we start to see something that is concerning, we would be able to pause the learning. And that is what we are watching every day to see if there is school spread. At this point, we are not seeing that, but that doesn't mean that we couldn't get additional data in the next couple of days that would bring us back, from the school perspective, bring us, our cabinet and our COVID response team, back together to have that discussion. So the recommendation for the plan is to continue as we are, but Dr. Goodwin is exactly correct in her assessment of that.
Thank you, Dr. Coffin. Mr. Walker, and then Mrs. Heinrich.
You mentioned that with the governing body that you speak with, the Oakland schools, they are helping to guide how you're maneuvering through the quarantines and the cases. Am I understanding correctly?
The Oakland County Superintendent's Association has a weekly meeting with the Oakland County Health Division.
Health Department, I'm sorry,
Yes.
thank you. Okay. Is there a recommended threshold that they are offering or discussing where they move away from moving classes around, or the kind of maneuvering that we're doing right now? Is there a threshold that they've thought about, discussed, that they say, okay, when you reach this point, then it would be our recommendation to then, go completely remote?
So the Oakland County Health Division has not set date. We have asked for that, because that makes things easier, right? When you have a threshold and you understand it. We have asked for that. They just have said, just keep looking at your numbers and call us if you have any questions, which they have been available. When we are not sure what is the best way to proceed, we have called the Oakland County Health Division and have gotten information. I'm only aware of one district in Oakland County, doesn't mean that there aren't more, who have set a threshold, and their threshold is 10% positive. Students, 10% of students positive in a class means the class goes remote. 10% of teachers at any one given moment in a school, the school goes remote. And really, if you look at how we have been acting, how we have been looking at things, that's basically what we've been doing. Like I said, if the classroom has 2 students, looking at our in-person numbers, I think sometimes it's 2 students, but really in some cases it's 3, but really it's 2 students. Once there are 2 students who are positive in a classroom, we have been transitioning that class to remote.
Okay.
We haven't had any instances, there's not been any time where in any of our buildings, 10% of our staff have been impacted or have been positive at the same time to under that standard, for instance, to go towards closing a school.
Dr. Goodrum, though, you do have data on percent positivity within our school district, because we are doing testing. The last I heard, it was, I don't remember the numbers offhand, but I think it was with respect to athletics.
Like athletics?
Yeah.
So I can give you an example. I can give you last week's information. My apologies.
I just mentioned that because in our discussions, I know that was a data point.
Yep.
So percent positivity within Farmington Public Schools, based on athletics testing, was pretty low. It was much lower than the 10% threshold.
Right, so the first week, we tested 825 people, and there were 3 students and 2 staff that were positive at that time out of 825 people. We tested 175 people at one point with 1 person positive. Let me see.
So I just mentioned that to say we're getting lots of texts. We get a text every day about the number of cases, and it's very alarming every time we get that text. But we're talking about in the context of 10, 11, 12,000 people.
And just last week, I have that data too. 747 tests administered last week, 3 positives. And these are rapids. I did check, though, in the cases where we had them, if the rapids were confirmed with the PCR. And in these cases, they have been.
Thank you, Dr. Goodman. Mrs. Heinrich.
I just want to acknowledge, I guess, and piggyback on what President Weems talked about, our reconfirmation of the learning plan. And when we agreed to go to 20 hours and the plan that we're on now, we recognized that there would be increases, and you told us that. And we also said that you were the experts and you were monitoring it, and with that plan, then we wanted you to act without having to consult the board. And I just want to recognize that I feel that even though we're uncomfortable with what is going on in the world and what is going on with the state, I don't think anybody living in the state of Michigan is excited about the fact that we're the epicenter of this. I feel that you are doing the job that we entrusted you to do by the fact that you're making the decisions to pause the entire 6th grade at one of the middle schools because that was deemed necessary. You're making the decision to pause an entire elementary classroom because that was deemed necessary without having to consult the board. And I want to acknowledge, well, we're not all comfortable with what is going on, and we're not all comfortable with the number. I feel that I am comfortable with the fact that you are acting with needs of the situation in each individual building, and I feel comfortable with the fact that if you decide that an entire school needs to be paused, to make the individual decisions rather than the entire district. And so even though it is not ideal, and there will never be an ideal situation, I feel like that's what we are being tasked with.
Mr. Walker and then Mrs. Smith. Oh, I'm sorry. If you guys don't mind, Mr. Rich has not had an opportunity yet. Mr. Rich.
Thank you. So one thing I just need to say is we made this decision as a board to be moving forward with in-person learning and leaving a lot of the authority to our district. Part of that is, as Ms. Weems said earlier, we're not going to be calling emergency meetings every other day in order to be making these decisions. We need to leave that in the hands of our administration, because not only had that been requested by board members in the past, but then the backlash our board received when that was potentially a thing that was going to happen. Not only that, but then should we be calling an emergency meeting, we have to wait 48 hours in order to do anything, if we did anything at all. And so that 48 hours is a large amount of time for other things to happen, whereas currently our administration is able to make those split time decisions without having to have that 48-hour wait period.
Right.
And that's really what I have to say. I am in favor of leaving this decision in the hands of our administration, who is constantly in communication and whose job it is to be making these decisions.
Thank you. Mr. Walker, and then Mrs. Smith. And then if there's anyone else who would like to speak, we want to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to be heard, and then we can move to our vote.
I just want to say again to everybody's point as well that there's nothing about this situation that makes anyone comfortable, certainly not myself, and I think any of us who are tied to any part of this process has moments of sleepless nights, moments of anxiety centered around the simple question, are we making the right decision, along the way? But I think one of the things we also need to point out is that, can't speak for other districts, but what we've provided for our community and for our parents who, based on feedback, have asked for this, they have choice. They can choose to keep their child at home. They can choose for their child to come to school. If they want to change their mind, as evidenced from earlier, they have the opportunity, based on whatever is possible within that school, to make a course correction based on additional information provided by the community. Our staff is working hard. Mr. Rich brings up an excellent point. They can pivot faster than we could get together and ask for a pivot. And we have to also, I think it is prudent, I think it is responsible, that we encourage our community to make sure that they are taking every step necessary to support the work that this district is trying to do in providing the education by being as obedient as possible to all of the social distancing requirements, wearing the masks, the sanitizing, to help us keep this process moving in as uninterrupted flow as possible. Personally, while I do not want to see anything happen to anybody's child, I still am in favor of leaving the decision in the hands of the people who can act and respond to it quickly. And I trust and believe that when they find a threshold that they find unacceptable, they will move accordingly.
Thank you, Mrs. Smith.
I am going to say this, and I say this with the utmost respect. I appreciate everything that Dr. Goodrum and Dr. Coffin has brought to us. They have brought some things to this board to let us know what is going on. Diane Bauman, I can't speak volumes of how much she has done for us. Am I asking to take this out of Dr. Goodrum and Dr. Coffin's hands? Absolutely not. That is not what I'm asking. They have come to us. They have given us the information. They have done everything but just say, here go the kid that's got it. They have done it all. But at the end of the day, we have had the parents that have come to us and said, we want this. Then you turn around and you get them to say, well, can you do this? This is not a light switch where you can turn on and off. These women's hands are tied. They have done what they could, and they're doing the best they can. They're trying to keep the kids safe. They're trying to keep the staff safe. But at the end of the day, we got to do this together, just like we as a board are working together. I agree with everything that every one of my colleagues have said today. But at the end of the day, I'm just going to be honest. My personal opinion, if I had it my way, they wouldn't be in school. And I'm pretty sure you're going to start writing and saying whatever, and I'm okay with that. But at the end of the day, their hands are tied. They are doing what they have to do as a superintendent and her cabinet. I do believe that when the time comes, they will tell us when or whatever, but they have worked with the CDC, Oakland schools, what have you, the superintendents, but I still stand by whatever, and I'm quite sure it's going to be, well, recall, or, well, you done tried that a couple of times. So At the end of the day, it's okay. It's okay. Those are my beliefs. I stand by them. But I do stand by my superintendent and support her. Well, I don't stand behind her, I stand beside her. And I stand beside her 100%. And when the time comes, yes, she has closed classrooms. Not because, oh, well, you know, this is a snow day or whatever. But at the end of the day, they have done what they have to do to make all students, but you parents got to work with us so that we don't have to worry about closing the classrooms down. This is the best I've ever had working on this board for the past 5 years. We all are saying the same thing. And like Mr. Rich said, by the time we have an emergency meeting, which we tried to have one before, and we were dragged and carried to whatever, but at the end of the day, by the time, because this Open Meetings Violation Act, 48 hours, we have to have that time to let the public know that what we're doing. So I'm asking everybody to be patient. Do I agree with staying open? No, but that is not a hit at Dr. Coffin or Dr. Goodrum. That is my personal belief. I am not beating, so I just want everybody in the community to know, because do not repeat and say something that I did not say. I am not attacking these two women. They are doing what they're supposed to be doing. They have followed the guidelines. That's my personal opinion, not an attack on them. And again, I thank the both of you for everything that you have done and how you are working to keep these children and the staff safe as much as you possibly can. I encourage staff, wear your mask. This may hurt a few, but when you're posting pictures on Facebook, have your mask on. Stop traveling somewhere and coming back here. Quarantine. That goes for your families too. So, you know, thank you to my colleagues for their opinions, and we are thinking pretty much the same way. And like Ms. Hendricks said, we put this in the experts' hands. But I do think we should pause, but I'm leaving it up to these two ladies to say that. Thank you.
So I greatly appreciate the diversity across this board. I know that there are varying opinions about this matter, but I appreciate your support. I appreciate your passion. I appreciate your support of our central office team and staff. I think we're ready for a motion. Is there anyone prepared to make a motion? Mrs. Heinrich.
Yes, I move that the Board of Education reconfirm the instructional delivery plan, Farmington Public Schools Extended COVID-19 Learning Plan as presented.
Support.
There's been a motion made by Mrs. Heinrich, supported by Mr. Walker, to reconfirm the instructional delivery plan as presented. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. Mr.
Just quickly.
Yes.
I just want to be clear that this does not, like, that reconfirming just means that for now, we're in this. If we will continue to to move classrooms to remote as necessary. If it becomes necessary to move a building to remote, we will do that. And we will do that right away and let you all know.
Thank you for that clarification. Is there any further discussion?
Can I just want to say one more thing.
Yes, Mrs. Fox.
I just want to mimic my colleague here. I wasn't comfortable the last vote prior to we've had this huge surge. I want you to know that I respect what you all are doing, but I have to live with myself. So please understand that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Fox. We definitely respect that. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none. Mr. Walker, may we have a roll call vote, please? kick something underneath. Mr. Walker?
Dr. Blau,
Yes.
Ms. Heinrich,
Yes.
Mr. Rich,
Yes.
Ms. Fox,
No.
Ms. Smith.
No.
I myself am yes. And Ms. Williams.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-2.
Thank you, Mr. Walker, and thank you, colleagues. I appreciate that discussion. We are now ready to move to item 10, which is items from the treasurer. Mrs. Heinrich.
Hold on. All right, thank you. Items from the treasurer, expenditures. I move that the Board of Education approve the expenditures as outlined in the expenditures printout dated April 20th, 2021 as followed. General Fund, $9,237,414. General Fund Athletics, $117,622. Debt Fund, 0. Capital Projects, 2018 Bond Fund, $930,035. Capital Projects 2020 Bond Fund, $295,369. Nutrition Services Fund, $182,174. Benefit Stabilization Fund, $1,035,104, for a total of $11,797,718.
Is there support?
Support.
Motion made by Mrs. Heinrich, supported by Mrs. Smith, to approve the expenditures. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Anyone need to recuse themselves? All right, looks like motion passes. Thank you very much. Next, we have the consent agenda. Mr. Rich.
Thank you. I move that the Board of Education approve the April 20th, 2021 consent agenda as follows. A, approval of minutes. This is for the April 6th, 2021 regular meeting and April 10th, 2021 board workshop. B, Head Start Director's monthly report. And C, personnel items.
Support. Motion made by Mr. Rich to approve the consent agenda, supported by Mrs. Smith. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Anyone need to recuse themselves? All right, motion passes. Thank you very much. Moving on to the next agenda item, which is number 12, reports from board representatives. Any reports from board representatives? Seeing none, we'll move to recommendations for future agenda items. Mr. Rich.
Thank you. Two things. First is just a note. Our district received through the Oakland County School Board Association a proclamation, one moment, a proclamation surrounding gun violence. And so I know that an email went out regarding that being added to our next agenda in May. And so this will be something that the policy committee will be able to look into, as the base of the proclamation looked good as a base proclamation. However, it didn't quite have anything to do with schools, which is why we would be, they had nothing specific. And so we're going to be looking into that as well. And then another item is our district received a petition through a change.org petition from over a year ago, which recently picked up traction regarding styrofoam lunch trays. And so that was essentially led by a student group called the Environmental Awareness Action Student Group, which was which is based at Farmington High School. And so we are going to be working with that group just to discuss where we are in the process of both lunch trays as well as what our district is doing to further the efforts of sustainability within our district. And so we will be working with district staff on that as well. And so that might be coming to the board at a later date. It won't be at this upcoming policy committee meeting because there needs to be a meeting with the student group first, just to make sure we have a shared definition of what is being looked for. But that'll be something just coming down the pipeline.
Thank you, Mr. Ridge. Mr. Walker.
President Williams, I look to your direction with respect to this, but I would like to bring back before the board or bring back into discussion the seclusion room situation. I've personally come into some additional information with respect to it that I would like to see vetted in whatever way is appropriate, whether it's an offline conversation and then we, I guess, reconfirm or however that process goes. But I think there's a little bit more discussion regarding the seclusion room and all of the associated aspects with that. So that's something I'd like to see.
Thank you, Mr. Walker. Those items will be added to a future agenda. Thank you. Moving on to good and welfare. Is there any good and welfare? Mr. Walker, and then Mrs. Smith.
Yes, I had the pleasure of attending the advisory board for the TV10 program here at North Farmington yesterday, and I just want to give kudos to...
You really hate throwing it over to Mr. Walker, don't you?
What is she doing?
I wanted to give kudos to Sean McLuckin and his team for the work that they do, minus when our board president is kicking something out of place. But the team at TV10, they do a fantastic job. We talked about the curriculum and what they're doing. For those who may not be familiar with the broadcast program that they present over here in video production and so forth, it's incredibly hard to teach video production when you have to stay, when your children and your students have to be remote. Yet they're showing a great deal of creativity, ingenuity, and working and bringing things together. And it's just a fabulous program over here at TV10 with Sean McLuckin and his leadership. And I just wanted to give credit where credit is certainly due, and the fact that they set us up here for our board meetings as well. So thank you, TV10 crew.
Yes. Mrs. Smith.
First and foremost, we have a president that is very humble at times. But this woman has received not only one award, but two. One being our president that she received from Michigan School Board Association, our Distinguished Award, which I think you and I are the only two that got that right now. I think you got to do that. But anyway, we recognizing Miss Weems today, so
Thank you.
Then we're gonna get you next.
Thank
But
you.
then we also have Miss Weems became Michigan Chronicle Women of Excellence. And she also, because she's the president of Detroit Employment Solutions Corporation, so I wanted, since she is very humble and wouldn't say it about herself, I am saying it for her. That's two good and welfares for Ms. Weems. Snap, snap, snap. But what I want to say too is I had the privilege of not only visiting all of our schools, well, not all of them, but majority of our schools on the 9th of April, and I enjoyed being with my colleagues, Claudia Henrich, Zach Rich, Terry Weems, Mabel Fox. You know, we missed you, Dr. Blau and Mr. Walker. And we had our one and only, our superintendent, Dr. Goodrum, that came along with us as well. But what I want to say is, on a personal note, and I have said this and I'm going to continue to say it, I am working with some of the best people, and I'm not just saying this because we're in the honeymoon stage. The honeymoon stage is kind of pretty much over, but I am enjoying each and every one of my colleagues. Again, do we agree on everything? Absolutely not. We all complement each other. I sit and I listen to the information that Ms. Henrich and Dr. Blau bring as far as educators. I listen to what Mr. Walker has to bring as, you know, a strong man that's also in education. And I also listen to what, and Ms. Fox, education, and Mr. Rich, we all know that that's our legislative guru over there. But we have some of the best board members right now, and great relationships. I enjoyed having lunch, getting to know our colleagues. I am just overjoyed. And, you know, I know everybody is looking and zooming in with what they're looking like. Well, you can't tell what we look like because we got these masks on. But behind these masks, you will see, there are smiles. There are smiles of joy. So I know you're looking at body language, so I'm just going to give you, you know, what you may see in baseball, you know, the signs. When you see me do this, that means I'm happy with them. You see me doing this, I'm happy. Now, when you see me doing this, which you will not see, but I'm happy. And I want to thank each and every one of you for being a part of this board, helping me get through the past few months. I really want to thank Terry Weems. Terry has been very inspirational through this whole process that I have gone through. She has called and checked on me to make sure that I was fine and everything was okay. Zach will call me or see me out somewhere, and of course, you know, I'm the loud one with all the colors, so he's gonna point that one out and let me know, oh, okay now, you know, Jacob with the many colors in the coat. So thank you all, and I don't say it enough, and we need to say it more. Thank you, Dr. Goodrum, for taking this position. Thank you all so very much. Yes, I'm Mama Bear, I'm gonna protect you. I'm going to tell you, hey, you know, FYI, watch out for this. But I want to tell you how much I appreciate you all in person, not behind the scenes. I want everybody to know this is not just something that you see we're putting on no show. We actually do get along. And like I said, it's not a honeymoon stage, but we do get along. And, you know, everybody's got different personalities. They're learning mine. And I appreciate each and every one of you. And thank you, Ms. Weems, and congratulations.
Thank you, Mrs. Smith. Mrs. Heinrich.
Yes, I just want to take a minute to recognize the families, just for all the challenges that you're going through, and for your support and your patience, and recognize the teachers. Parenting is such a hard job, teaching is such a hard job, and just to encourage the parents to say thank you to your teachers every day if you have to, and there's never too many thank yous. And I just want to recognize our district. Last weekend, I participated in 2 classes through Michigan Association of School Board, Curriculum and Instruction and Community Relations Leadership, and just talking about things that make good school districts and things that school districts, and opportunity to go into chat rooms and discussion rooms with members of other school board members. And so many times I'm like, well, we're doing that in Farmington. And oh, Farmington does that. And yes, I mean, Farmington has so many things in place in our district leadership teams and just cutting edge best practices already in place. And so I just want to acknowledge and recognize our district and our leadership team. And parents, you need to know, when you say, why Farmington? There's just a lot of reasons, a lot of things that we are doing well. And you just, sometimes when people do their job well, you just roll with it and really don't recognize how extraordinary it is. So thank you, families, and thank you, teachers and staff and instructional leaders.
Are we doing the snap now? Is that what we're doing?
I think that's what's happening.
Thank you. I just got into it. It became a thing. Seeing no further good and welfare, thank you for all of that great good and welfare, and thank you for your recognition.
Wait.
Oh, Mrs. Dr. Bly.
Don't we have something happening tomorrow?
What do we have happening tomorrow?
Isn't it the recognition day tomorrow?
Yes, it is, and we are recognizing tomorrow.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry, I thought I mentioned that in our text.
Okay.
But let's go ahead and recognize now.
Okay. So we want to thank Kim Buckley for all that she does. Don't know how she does it. She is amazing. Woo! Tomorrow is Appreciation Day, and we just wanted you to know in advance that we greatly appreciate all that you do with and for us.
We do, and we say it all the time behind closed doors, but we should say it more often out loud to you in person. Thank you for everything you do.
Thank you, Kim.
Thank you, ma'am.
And thank you for ordering our salads.
Okay, on that note, I think we are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Be safe out there.